Mhm. Now, let us move into the third major pattern of disturbance in the fifth house, Kapha aggravation in the fifth house. And you need to understand immediately that this is a completely different experience from both Vata and Pitta, where Vata brings irregularity, where Pitta brings overheating. Kapha brings slowing, thickening, accumulation, and stagnation. And that is the essential principle. So when Kapha increases in the fifth house, the problem is not that the system becomes too unstable and not that it becomes too hot. The problem is that the system becomes too heavy to move efficiently. And this is very important because the fifth house governs a very intelligent processing zone of the body and mind, digestion, memory, creative intelligence, liver function, pancreas, spleen, reproductive hormones, and the central abdominal field. So when kapha accumulates here, the whole zone begins to lose sharpness and mobility. It becomes dense, sluggish, retentive. I have seen in many charts that kapha in the fifth house first shows itself through slowness after intake. That could mean after food, after emotion, after information, after experience. Can you appreciate how interesting that is? Because the fifth house is a house of processing. It digests not only food, but also ideas, impressions, feeling tones, memory, and creative response. So if kapha increases here, the native may not necessarily lack capacity, but the processing becomes slower, heavier, and more loaded. Now let us start with the physical digestive expression, because this is the most visible entry point. When kapha rises in the fifth house, the digestive system often becomes sluggish. The person may have weak digestion, a sense of heaviness after meals, slow metabolism, and gradual accumulation in the abdominal region. Food tends to sit, digestion takes longer. The person may feel sleepy or dull after eating. There may be post-meal heaviness, excess mucus, and a general sense that the body is not breaking things down efficiently. This is very important because students sometimes mistake kapha for strength. They think kapha stabilizes, so maybe this is good. But no, when aggravated, that same stabilizing quality becomes stagnation. It becomes over retention. So instead of proper nourishment, the person may experience low metabolism, weight gain, abdominal fat accumulation, excess mucus, and reduced digestive clarity. That is why I often tell students kapha does not always deny nourishment. It can block the proper use of nourishment. That is the subtle distinction. Now let us go into the liver-pancreas axis because this is one of the most important parts of this slide. In kapha aggravation, the metabolism tends to become heavy and slow. So the liver and pancreas may begin to show patterns of congestion rather than combustion. This is where we start seeing possibilities like fatty liver tendencies, insulin resistance patterns, and sluggish bile flow. Now again, we are speaking astrologically and constitutionally here, not replacing clinical evaluation, but the pattern is clear. The body is not moving and transforming efficiently. It is storing too much, processing too slowly, and clearing too weakly. I have seen this in many charts where the native says, I do not even eat that much, but things feel stuck. Or my body gains weight easily, or I always feel heavy after eating, or my metabolism is slow. That language is very important because kapha does not always scream. Very often it settles into the system slowly, quietly, and persistently. That is its nature. Now let us speak about the spleen and lymphatic involvement because this is where kapha in the fifth house becomes especially interesting. The slide mentions lymphatic congestion and edema, and that fits the larger kapha logic very beautifully. Whenever kapha aggravates, fluids can become excessive, movement can reduce, and the body may start holding more than it should. So in the fifth house zone, this can show up as puffiness, water retention, congestion in the abdominal or tissue field, and a general feeling of internal heaviness or swelling. The person may feel that their body is not just slow, it is loaded. And you need to understand this distinction too. Slowness is one thing, congestion is another. Kapha does both. Now let us move into the reproductive hormonal dimension, because this is very important in fifth house analysis. The fifth house is deeply tied to reproductive intelligence and hormonal patterning. So when kapha accumulates here, the reproductive system may not necessarily become fiery or irregular the way it does under Pitta or Vata. Instead, it becomes slow, dampened, or excessive in a congestive way. That is why the slide points to the reduced libido, excess estrogen type accumulation patterns, and delayed ovulation. You need to see the principle underneath these observations. Kapha slows timing and increases retention. So the native may feel that the reproductive system is not responding quickly, not clearing quickly, not cycling dynamically. There may be delay, dampening, reduced drive, or hormonal heaviness. Sometimes desire itself becomes more passive. Sometimes the body feels less responsive. Sometimes there is a sense of internal inertia. I have seen this in charts where the person is not chaotic, not overheated, but simply feels stuck in their own biology. They may say, my system is slow. Things are delayed. I feel heavy, or I don't feel much drive. And that is a very kapha type expression. Now let us go beyond the purely physical and talk about the psychological kapha effect in the fifth house, because the slide gives us a beautiful clue. It says kapha thickens emotional attachment. That line is very profound, because the fifth house is not just digestion and hormones. It is also romance, affection, emotional investment, memory, creativity, children, and what we become deeply attached to. So when kapha increases here, attachment becomes heavier. The emotions do not move quickly, they cling. I have seen this many times. When kapha strongly occupies the fifth house field, the native may hold on to old emotional bonds, become deeply attached in romance, struggle to let go of children, students, lovers, or creative projects, and become emotionally sedentary. This is not always dramatic suffering. Sometimes it looks very sweet from the outside. Loyal, steady, nurturing, devoted, and yes, at its best, kapha does give those qualities. But when excessive, it becomes possessive through attachment or immobile through overfeeling. You need to understand that, because just as kapha retains fluids in the body, it can also retain unfinished emotional weight in the psyche, and that affects creativity too. The fifth house is the house of creative intelligence. When kapha is balanced, creativity can become fertile, stable, and beautifully sustained. But when kapha is excessive, creativity may become slow, repetitive, comfort-seeking, or resistant to change. The native may have imagination, but not movement, feeling, but not momentum, depth, but not spark, that is the shadow. So in chart interpretation, when you see kapha aggravating the fifth house, you should not ask only, is there talent? You should ask, is the system too slow to express it? Is digestion becoming too heavy? Is metabolism reduced? Is there congestion in liver, pancreas, spleen, or lymph? Are hormones becoming dampened or delayed? Is attachment becoming thick and hard to release? Is creativity becoming comfortable rather than alive? Those are the real questions. And this is why the line slows metabolism and thickens emotional attachment is such a brilliant summary, because it captures both sides of kapha in this house. The body holds and slows, and the heart holds and slows. That is kapha in the fifth house. So the final teaching I want you to take from this is very simple, but very deep. Kapha increases in the fifth house, digestion becomes sluggish, metabolism slows, congestion builds, reproductive timing may be delayed, and emotional attachment becomes denser and harder to release. At its best, this can give steadiness, loyalty, emotional depth, nurturing intelligence, and sustained creative capacity. But when aggravated, it becomes heaviness, weak digestion, Post-meal dullness, weight gain, mucus and fluid accumulation, sluggish liver pancreas function, reduced reproductive drive and emotional overattachment. You read a chart like this, do not confuse stillness with balance. Sometimes the person looks calm, but internally the system is stuck. And once you learn to see that, Kapha in the fifth house becomes one of the easiest patterns to recognize.